to Albany County Direct. I'm your host, County Executive Daniel McCoy. On today's episode, we're joined here by our Director of Albany County Crime Victims and Sexual Violence Center, Amanda. And I want to say thank you for being here. And we're going to talk a little bit about you, get into what this month really means, especially in the month of January. But I know we're in February 3rd now, so I understand that to the listeners. But we want to really highlight an important program through your office. But do you want to tell the listeners a little bit about yourself before I get into this?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Amanda Wingle, as you said. I'm the director of the Crime Victim and Sexual Violence Center. I've been with the agency since 2017. I started out in the campus coordinator position, and prior to that, I worked for Equinox Domestic Violence Services.
Nice. And you know what? You took over for Karen Ziegler, who's there for years, and you're doing a great job, and I want to say thank you. But thanks for being here. January was Human Trafficking Awareness Month, and I want to highlight this because it's kind of like one of them things people don't talk about and do not realize how much human trafficking goes on in this area. And again, we're strategically located to the Canadian border, to Boston, to New York City, going out towards Buffalo. And it's a real problem here, and you just don't hear about it for one reason or another. We try to highlight it. We're not trying to scare listeners. We're not trying to scare kids. But it happens, and it's usually more vulnerable kids than kids of influence, I should say, or parents have means, because obviously that's going to hit the news more. So if they get some kid and they kidnap them or take them and they win them over, and you can get into all that, how that works. It's easier because not too many people are looking for them, unfortunately, and they know how to pick the right person. So, but we want to make people aware of that. And many people think trafficking only happens elsewhere, and what I would say to those who don't realize that it happens right here in our region. Do you want to highlight that a little bit?
Yeah, it absolutely does happen here. I think there's, as you said, this perception that it's a situation where people are being kind of forcibly kidnapped and dragged across state borders or even international borders. But it does happen here. And the reason that it happens here is because traffickers are exploiting everyday vulnerabilities, right? Financial stress, lack of housing, isolation. So it doesn't really have to have so much to do with geography as it does just finding vulnerable folks who, of course, do exist here and exist everywhere. So it's really the exploitation of people through force, fraud, or coercion for purposes like forced labor or commercial sex. And the reality is that it often involves kind of what we would think of as everyday people who are just exploiting other people's vulnerabilities in less visible ways.
I agree with you. What would be some of the warning signs that community members should be aware of?
So some of the things you would want to look out for would be somebody who kind of seems like they have limited freedom or autonomy, like somebody else has control over them. They seem like they're very closely monitored. They're not really able to speak for themselves. You ask them a question and the other person answers for them. They're dependent on someone else for their basic needs. They seem fearful or they seem anxious, submissive, just kind of afraid of speaking openly.
Right.
In terms of work, you'll often see folks who are working unusually long hours and they're unpaid or underpaid, or they can't really explain their job too clearly. They may have somebody else who has control over their ID, their passport, their money. They appear malnourished, or they're exhausted, or they lack appropriate clothing for the weather. And the biggest piece can often be that they have little contact with friends, family, or the community, because this is a crime that the trafficker is relying on them to be isolated and not have those resources to turn to.
Correct. And again, when you talk about the internet and everything that's out there, parents need to be more visual. Unfortunately, the AI technology, everything's getting more and more, and you see these sex predators or traffickers, they focus on kids, and, when you're fighting with your parents and you're telling them no and they can't do this, and someone's saying, oh, no, you're so beautiful, you're so this, and it starts to happen, and they're grooming them, and then you run into the issues that we run into, and it's unfortunately. And one of the things, several awareness efforts were made through the month of January, including screening of the film Trafficked in America. We were hosting several other events, not just about about America, but about everything, the numbers, prevention groups out there, really trying to educate people. What would you take away from the filming or anything that we've been doing to outreach? And I know, I want to say this to the listeners, this is just not the month of January. We do throughout the whole year, 365. It doesn't stop. It just gets highlighted in the month, and you're highlighting every day. You have men and women working for you. That it's a hard job. Not that I don't like to visit your office. I don't, because it's tough. You're dealing with bad situations every day, and you got to be upbeat and try to walk that person and navigate them through the system and help them. It's hard on your workers. It's hard on you. But what would you say for the month of January, highlighting everything in the groups? What would you want to point out?
So I guess the major thing that I would want to point out about human trafficking is kind of what we touched on earlier, that it's happening right around us in very subtle, everyday ways. Again, not somebody necessarily being dragged across a border. But what I tend to really notice with the events is that people do want to talk about these topics, and it's really important for giving them a forum to do so. They want to learn more. Maybe they have been affected, or they know somebody who has been affected. And it can feel really, really isolating for people when they feel like maybe they're the only one who has gone through something like that. So holding these events is just really important, not only for raising awareness, but for giving people that space. Right,
which is so important with the awareness is such a critical first step in combating human trafficking. These are pointers people should listen to. And again, not just because someone's isolating themselves, or you don't have to go worst case scenario, but there could be more. And sometimes you got to dig in. And you were saying earlier in this conversation how people are so busy. They're working 2 jobs to pay the rent or pay the mortgage, put food on the table, pay the electrical bill. Sometimes it gets hard. And when your kids want to play sports, and you not that you intentionally shut them down, but you just got so much time in a day. Parents need to take a step back, take a deep breath, look at the situation at home, but get into the social media. And trust me when I say this, it keeps evolving and changing. You probably need help. You got to have a neighbor, a coworker that's really on top of that can put different apps on their phones and trace what they're doing, who they're talking to, where they're going. You got that Life 360. These are things that people need to take into consideration. Any moments or conversations during these events that really stayed with you that you'd like to share?
I guess for me, like I was saying before, it's just always the people who will oftentimes come up to you after the event. They want to talk to you privately, and they just say, I know I went through this. I know somebody who went through this. What you're doing is really important, and that always just sticks with me because it kind of reminds me why we're doing the work that we're doing, right, is to show support to those community members.
Which is so important, right? When I agree with you. Sometimes you'll have the people talk in a group or their experience. They're okay. Not that they're okay with it. They just got to a point where it helps them heal, right? And then you have the people that don't want to say anything to anyone, and they wait to get you alone. And I know dealing with soldiers that have come back from the war and mentoring them, and my friends, and it's the same thing. You're in a group, everything's fine. That person's a jackass, blah 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 blah, and you get them alone, and they're and they open up, and they're like, no, I'm dealing with all this. And it's the same thing with these groups. So, if, people can go to your website, they can call your office, they can talk to people in confidence, even if they think it's nothing and they just want to, hey, look, I'm not sure of this, call your office and be like, I think this situation's going on. You can guide them or get them to the right person they need to get to, correct?
Absolutely. And I think that's a really important point, is that we want people to reach out to us, even if, maybe they're not exactly sure what happened. They don't know how to define it. They don't know if, under the letter of the law, it actually constitutes a crime. For the purposes of providing support to the community, we're not really too concerned with any of that. We just want to be able to provide that emotional support and the resources they need for their healing process.
If there's one message you want listeners to take away from Human Trafficking Awareness Month, what would that be? And I know you hit a couple, and I'm going to keep hitting it because there's so many out there.
There are unfortunately a lot to choose from. I think one thing that often comes up, excuse me, is oftentimes people want to know how they can help, right? Like if they know, maybe they know about a situation that's going on. And I think it's really important to just remember that any efforts to help, and not just human trafficking, any type of crime victim, really have to be led and dictated by that victim, because they know their story the best. They know what would or would not be a good solution for them.
Right.
So it's really just about offering them your support, rather than trying to say, you should do A, B, C, and D, because the reality is those might not always be safe things for them to do.
Right.
So it's allowing them to kind of guide the conversation and just being that support when they feel ready and able to take action.
Which, again, to the listeners out there, listen, just pick up the phone, go to the internet, Google it, call our office, look at all the programs, get involved, look at what's going on. And again, just because they're isolating themselves, could be other issues, but get to the core and just know who they're hanging out with, or if they're, not hanging out with, or if they're on their iPads at night or their phone at 2 a.m. or midnight or 4, who they're talking to, and I hate to say it, you almost got to be like a detective and navigate that world. So it's important, because we don't want the alternative, right? And if the listeners take anything away from this, I would love to sit here with you and tell everyone, as the director of crime victims, we don't have the trafficking issues. It's not here in Albany County. We're great. We're better than the rest of the state of New York and the other 49 states in this great country of ours, right? We're not. We're in the same situation everyone else is. It's just done quieter. They're trafficking from New York City to Canada and vice versa. Be aware. Keep your eyes open. Look at a situation. And you know what? Calling 911 or the non-emergency saying, hey, you saw a situation at a truck stop or a restaurant, there's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? It's better to be safe than sorry. So I do want to say thank you for joining me today, and the important work that you're always doing day in, day out. And I like to say it's just not, 5 to 7, or 7 to 2, or 8 in the morning to like 9 at night. It's 24/7. Your office is up and running. So, for our listeners out there, hopefully you enjoyed today's episode, and please check out our other episodes on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe so you never miss an update. But more importantly, Amanda, I do want to thank our director from Crime Victims and Sexual Violence Center, and please go to the website on the county, check out the programs, and if you got a program out there, you got a better solution, or you got an idea, share it with us. We're all ears. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.